The Arizona sun blazed mercilessly overhead as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stepped off the dusty military transport truck, her boots hitting the hard-packed earth of Fort Mason with determination. The heat hit her like a physical wall, but she kept her spine straight and her expression neutral. This sprawling training facility, with its obstacle courses stretching toward distant mountains and shooting ranges that seemed to go on forever, would be her home for the next 6 months. At 28, Maria had already survived 2 combat tours overseas and earned commendations that most soldiers could only dream of. Her Bronze Stars and Purple Heart meant nothing here, though. She could feel it in the way conversation stopped as she passed, in the lingering stares that followed her movement across the base. This wasn't respect. It was something else entirely. Well, what do we have here? The voice cut through the desert air like a blade. Maria turned to see a group of male soldiers lounging near the barracks steps, their uniforms crisp and their attitudes casual. The speaker was tall and broad-shouldered, with sergeant stripes on his uniform and a smirk that immediately set Maria's teeth on edge. His name tag read, Garrison. Looks like they sent us another desk jockey to play soldier. Garrison continued, loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. The other men chuckled, and Maria felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced countless times before when walking into rooms where she clearly wasn't wanted. Maria kept walking, her pack secure on her shoulders and her face carefully neutral. She'd learned long ago that reacting to comments like these only fed the fire. But Garrison wasn't finished. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he called out, stepping directly into her path. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Don't tell me you're here for sniper training. Please tell me you're just lost and looking for the typing pool." The laughter that followed was harsh and deliberate. Maria finally stopped walking and looked Sergeant Garrison up and down. His uniform was spotless, probably had never seen real combat. His hands were soft, unmarked by the calluses that came from actually holding a rifle under fire. Everything about him screamed inexperience dressed up as authority. "Staff Sergeant Maria Santos," she said calmly, extending her hand with professional courtesy. "And yes, I'm here for the advanced sniper course." Garrison looked at her outstretched hand like it might contain something contagious, then reluctantly shook it. His grip was deliberately firm, designed to intimidate. Maria had dealt with worse. "Santos, huh?" His voice dripped with condescension. "Let me guess, you checked some diversity box and they fast-tracked you through basic. Wow, sweetheart, this isn't some feel-good program. This is the real deal. Men's work." Maria's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "I earned my place here, Sergeant, just like everyone else." "We'll see about that," Garrison said, stepping back with a laugh that his followers immediately echoed. "Won't we, boys?" As Maria continued toward the administrative building, their comments followed her like shadows. $20 says she washes out in the first week. I'll take that bet. I give her 3 days. My money's on her crying herself to sleep tonight. Inside the cool administrative building, Maria checked in with the duty officer and received her room assignment. The corporal, behind the desk, a young woman with kind eyes, gave her a sympathetic look. "Don't let them get to you," she said quietly. "Some of these guys are still living in the Stone Age." "Thanks," Maria replied, "but I've dealt with worse than a few insecure bullies." Her room was small but clean. A single bunk, a metal locker, and a desk by the window that looked out over the shooting ranges. As she unpacked her gear with practiced efficiency, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her here. Growing up in a rough neighborhood in San Antonio, she'd learned early that respect wasn't given. It was earned through blood, sweat, and unwavering determination. Her father, a Vietnam veteran with steady hands and patient eyes, had taught her to shoot when she was 12. By 15, she could outshoot most adults at the local range. The Army had been her ticket out of poverty and towards something better. She'd excelled in basic training, finished at the top of her advanced individual training, and proved herself in combat situations that would have broken lesser soldiers. But somehow, none of that mattered to men like Garrison. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a middle-aged man in officer's uniform, his name tag reading, Lieutenant Colonel James Reeves. "Staff Sergeant Santos," he said, his voice crisp but not unfriendly. "I'm Colonel Reeves, commanding officer of this training facility. I wanted to welcome you personally." "Thank you, sir," Maria replied, snapping to attention. "At ease," Reeves said, studying her with intelligent eyes. "I've reviewed your file. Impressive record. 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart, and marksmanship scores that put you in the top 5% of all soldiers. That's why you're here." "Yes, sir." Reeves was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I won't lie to you, Santos. You're going to face challenges here that have nothing to do with your ability to shoot. Some of these men are good soldiers, but they have outdated ideas about women in combat roles." "I can handle it, sir," Maria said firmly. "I believe you can. But remember, you're not just representing yourself here. Every woman who comes after you will be judged by how you perform." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "No pressure." After the colonel left, Maria sat on her bunk and looked out the window at the shooting ranges in the distance. Tomorrow, training would begin in earnest. She'd face the doubters, the skeptics, and the outright hostile. But she'd also face the opportunity to prove what she'd always known, that skill, dedication, and heart mattered more than gender. She thought of her father's words, spoken the day she'd shipped out for her first deployment. "Mia, they're going to try to tear you down. But remember, steel is forged in fire. Let them doubt you, then show them what you're made of." As the sun set over Fort Mason, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Maria cleaned her personal sidearm and prepared for the battle ahead. It wouldn't be fought with bullets and explosives, but with precision, patience, and the quiet strength that had carried her through every challenge in her life. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The alarm clock's harsh buzz cut through the desert morning at 0500 hours. Maria was already awake, had been for 10 minutes staring at the ceiling and mentally preparing for what lay ahead. She dressed quickly in her BDUs, laced up her boots with practiced efficiency, and made her way to the mess hall. The facility was already buzzing with activity. Soldiers moved with purpose toward breakfast, their conversations a mix of anticipation and nervous energy. Maria grabbed a tray and loaded it with scrambled eggs, toast, and black coffee. She found an empty table near the back and ate in relative peace, observing the dynamics around her. "Mind if we join you?" The voice belonged to a stocky soldier, with corporal stripes and an honest face. His name tag read Martinez. "It's a free country," Maria replied, gesturing to the empty chairs. Martinez sat down, followed by 2 other soldiers. "I'm Tommy Martinez. This is Jake Williams and Peter Collins. We heard about yesterday's welcome committee." Maria raised an eyebrow. "News travels fast." "Garrison's got a big mouth," Williams said, shaking his head. "Don't let him speak for all of us. Some of us actually care more about whether you can shoot straight than what bathroom you use." "Appreciate that," Maria said, meaning it. Collins, who looked barely old enough to shave, leaned forward. "My sister's a Marine infantry. She says the real test isn't proving you belong. It's proving you belong despite everyone trying to prove you don't." "Smart kid," Maria thought. "Your sister sounds like she's got her head on straight." At 0-6-30, they all filed out to the first training area, a covered pavilion with long tables set up for weapons, inspection, and basic instruction. Master Sergeant Frank Morrison, a weathered veteran with 30 years of service, stood at the front with an M24 sniper rifle system laid out on the table. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison began, his voice carrying easily across the pavilion, "welcome to the most demanding course the Army has to offer. For the next 6 months, you will eat, sleep, and breathe precision shooting. Some of you will discover you have what it takes. Most of you will not." His eyes swept across the assembled soldiers, lingering for just a moment on Maria before continuing. "The sniper's role is not glamorous. It's hours of waiting, calculating, and patience, followed by seconds of perfect execution. It requires mental toughness, physical endurance, and absolute dedication to excellence." Morrison lifted the rifle from the table. "This is your new best friend, the M24 sniper weapon system. Effective range of 800 meters. Though in the right hands it can reach much further. Every shot counts because in the field you might not get a second chance." The instruction continued for 2 hours, covering everything from basic rifle maintenance to ballistics theory. Maria absorbed every word, taking detailed notes and asking technical questions that demonstrated her knowledge. She noticed some of the men around her struggling with concepts she found elementary after the classroom session. They moved to the 100-meter range for initial marksmanship assessment. Each soldier would fire 10 rounds from a supported position, with their scores determining their placement in the program. "Santos," Morrison called out, "you're up first." Maria approached the firing line, aware that every eye was on her. She could hear whispered comments from behind. "This should be good for a laugh. $20 says she can't hit the target. Probably never fired anything bigger than a water pistol." Maria settled into the prone position behind the rifle, adjusting the bipod and checking her sight picture. The weight of the weapon felt familiar and comfortable in her hands. She controlled her breathing, let her heart rate settle, and focused on the fundamentals her father had drilled into her years ago. The first shot rang out, clean and sharp in the desert air. Through the spotting scope, the range officer called, "Out, X-ring, center." A murmur went through the group. The X-ring was the smallest scoring area, dead center of the bullseye. Maria fired again, X-ring, and again. X-ring. By her 5th shot, the comments behind her had stopped entirely. By her 10th shot, you could have heard a pin drop. 10 shots, 10 X-rings, Morrison announced, his voice neutral but his eyes showing a hint of approval. Perfect score of 100. Maria cleared the rifle and stood up, her face impassive. Inside, she felt a surge of satisfaction, but she kept it to herself. This was just the beginning. Garrison was up next. He approached the firing line with swagger, making a show of adjusting the rifle and taking his time with sight alignment. His first shot scored an 8. His second was a 7. By the time he finished, his score was 76, respectable, but nowhere near Maria's perfect 100. "Beginner's luck," he muttered as he passed her, loud enough for others to hear. The testing continued through the afternoon. Martinez scored an 89, Williams managed an 82, and Collins surprised everyone with a 91. But no one came close to Maria's perfect score. That evening, as soldiers cleaned their weapons and prepared for the next day, Maria sat at her small desk writing a letter to her father. She'd just finished describing the day's events when a knock came at her door. She opened it to find Morrison standing in the hallway, his weathered face serious. "Mind if I come in, Santos?" "Of course, Master Sergeant." Morrison entered and closed the door behind him. He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "In 30 years of training snipers, I've seen maybe a dozen perfect scores on that initial assessment. Most of them were soldiers with years of competitive shooting experience or previous sniper training. I've been shooting since I was 12, Master Sergeant. I figured as much. Your form, your breathing control, your trigger discipline. That's not something you learn overnight. Morrison paused. I've also read your file. Your performance in Afghanistan suggests you can handle yourself under pressure. Maria waited, sensing there was more. Here's the thing, Santos. That perfect score today painted a target on your back. Some of these men are going to see it as a challenge. They're going to try to prove that one good day doesn't mean anything. Let them try, Maria said quietly. Morrison smiled slightly. That's what I was hoping you'd say, but be smart about it. Don't let pride make you sloppy. Don't let their comments get under your skin. Just keep doing what you did today. Let your shooting do the talking. After he left, Maria returned to her letter. Outside her window, she could see soldiers moving between the barracks, their voices carrying in the still desert air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. She thought about her sister Rosa, working 2 jobs to put herself through nursing school, and her mother, who cleaned office buildings at night to make ends meet. They were counting on her success, not just for the career opportunities it would bring, but for what it represented. Proof that Santos women didn't back down from anything. As she sealed the letter, Maria made herself a promise. Whatever came next, whatever tests or trials or deliberate sabotage these men might throw at her, she would meet it head on. She hadn't come this far to fold under pressure. The real competition was just beginning. 2 weeks into the course, Maria had maintained her position at the top of every assessment. Whether it was precision shooting at extended ranges, target identification drills, or tactical problem-solving scenarios, she consistently outperformed her peers. What should have been a source of pride had instead become a source of mounting tension. The harassment had escalated beyond simple comments. Her gear would mysteriously go missing before important exercises, only to reappear just before inspections. Her alarm clock had been tampered with twice, causing her to oversleep and merely miss morning formation. Someone had even put salt in her coffee thermos, ruining an entire day's hydration strategy during a grueling desert field exercise. But it was the psychological warfare that proved most challenging. Garrison and his followers had developed a subtle campaign of undermining her achievements, always careful to stay just within the bounds of plausible deniability. Must be nice having different standards, Garrison would say whenever Maria outscored him on an exercise. I heard they're thinking of creating a separate women's category for the final assessment, another would add. Yeah, kind of like how they have separate bathrooms. Some things just make sense. The comments were always delivered with smiles, as if they were harmless jokes among friends. But Maria knew better. They were designed to plant seeds of doubt, to make others question the legitimacy of her success. The worst part was that it seemed to be working on some of the instructors. Master Sergeant Morrison remained supportive, but she'd noticed other staff members treating her differently, asking easier questions during tactical briefings, offering unsolicited advice during shooting exercises, or worse, ignoring her entirely. 3 weeks in, during a particularly challenging stalking exercise, Maria found herself paired with Garrison as her spotter. The assignment required teams to move undetected across 2 miles of desert terrain, establish a concealed firing position, and engage multiple targets at ranges up to 600 meters. Try to keep up, Santos, Garrison said as they prepared to move out. This isn't a shooting range with nice, neat distances and perfect conditions. Maria adjusted her ghillie suit and checked her equipment one final time. I'll do my best, Sergeant. They moved out before dawn, using the limited cover of desert scrub and natural terrain features to mask their approach. Maria took point, using hand signals to communicate with Garrison as they navigated toward their assigned sector. 2 hours into the movement, they encountered their first challenge, a 200-meter stretch of open ground with no concealment. Maria studied the terrain through her binoculars, noting the wind direction, the position of the sun, and the patrol pattern of the opposing force instructors who were trying to spot them. "We wait for that cloud cover," she whispered, pointing to a bank of clouds approaching from the west. "Then we move fast and low along that depression." "I don't think so," Garrison replied. "We go now, straight across. Trust me, I've done this before. The timing's wrong. They'll spot us for sure." "Are you questioning my judgment, Santos?" Maria looked at him, weighing her options. She could pull rank. She was a staff sergeant to his sergeant, but that would create more problems than it solved. Instead, she decided to trust her instincts. "I'm going to wait for better conditions," she said firmly. Garrison's face flushed with anger. "Fine. Sit here like a scared little girl. I'm moving out." Before Maria could stop him, Garrison rose from their concealed position and began crossing the open ground. Within 30 seconds, a whistle blew and a red smoke grenade marked his position. He'd been spotted and eliminated from the exercise. Maria waited another 15 minutes for the cloud cover, then moved across the depression she'd identified. She made it undetected and continued toward the target area. Working alone now, she established a firing position behind a low ridge, approximately 500 meters from the target array. The shots were challenging moving targets at varying distances with wind gusts reaching 15 miles per hour. But she trained for these conditions and faced them in real combat situations where the stakes were life and death. She took her time, calculating wind drift and target movement, controlling her breathing and managing her heart rate. When she was ready, she began engaging targets. Her first shot took down a pop-up target at 450 meters. The second eliminated a moving silhouette at 380 meters. One by one, she worked through the entire array, adjusting for changing conditions and maintaining the steady rhythm that separated professional snipers from weekend marksmen. When the exercise ended, Maria had achieved a perfect score, the only student to successfully engage all targets while remaining undetected throughout the exercise. "Outstanding work, Santos," Morrison said as she reported to the assessment station. "Textbook stalking technique and exceptional shooting under field conditions." But as Maria walked back toward the barracks, she overheard Garrison talking to a group of other students. "Yeah, she got lucky," he was saying. "If I hadn't been eliminated, drawing their attention away from her sector, she never would have made it to the firing position." "Seriously?" one of the others asked. "Absolutely. Classic case of benefiting from teamwork while taking individual credit. Pretty typical behavior, if you ask me." Maria stopped walking, her hands clenching into fists. For a moment, she considered confronting him directly, calling him out in front of everyone, and setting the record straight. But she forced herself to keep moving. Getting into an argument would only feed into the narrative that she was emotional and unstable. That evening, she found herself in the base recreation center, working through her frustration on a heavy bag. Each punch carried the weight of every slight, every doubt, every deliberate attempt to undermine her achievements. "You're going to hurt yourself if you keep hitting it like that." Maria turned to find Collins, the young soldier from breakfast. That first day, standing nearby with a concerned expression. "Just blowing off some steam," she said, unwrapping her hands. "Mind if I ask what happened out there today?" "Word is Garrison's telling everyone he threw himself on a grenade for you." Maria sat down on a nearby bench, suddenly exhausted. "He ignored my assessment of the tactical situation, moved when I advised against it, and got himself eliminated. Then he turned it into some heroic sacrifice story." Collins shook his head. "That's messed up. For what it's worth, Williams and Martinez know what really happened. They were watching from the observation post." "Doesn't matter," Maria said. "The story's already out there. It does matter, Collins insisted. Truth matters. Your performance today was incredible. I've been in the Army for 4 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. As they talked, Maria found herself opening up about the constant pressure, the deliberate sabotage, and the growing feeling that no matter how well she performed, it would never be enough for some people. My sister warned me about this, Collins sighed. She calls it moving the goalposts. No matter how high you jump, they raise the bar and claim you're not really clearing it. So, what did she do? Collins smiled. She kept jumping higher until even the people moving the goalposts had to admit she was flying. Walking back to her barracks that night, Maria thought about Collins' words. She was already performing at the top of her class, but maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe she needed to do something so spectacular, so undeniably excellent, that even her harshest critics would have to acknowledge her abilities. The final examination was still months away, but Maria began planning for it that night. She would train harder, study longer, and push herself to levels of performance that would leave no room for doubt or qualification. She had come too far to settle for anything less than absolute, unquestionable excellence. By the 6th week of training, the pressure had reached a crescendo. Maria's consistent top performance had created a divide among the students, those who respected her abilities and those who seemed determined to prove her success was somehow illegitimate. The latter group, led by Garrison, had become increasingly creative in their attempts to undermine her. The breaking point came during a night shooting exercise that would test their ability to engage targets in low-light conditions using night vision equipment. The scenario was complex. Teams would navigate to multiple firing positions, engage targets at ranges from 200 to 800 meters, and extract without being detected by opposing forces. Maria had been paired with Martinez for this exercise, a partnership she was grateful for. Tommy Martinez had proven to be professional and supportive, never letting personal bias interfere with the mission at hand. Winds picking up from the southwest, Martinez whispered as they settled into their first firing position. He was serving as her spotter, using a night vision scope to help identify targets and call corrections. "I've got it," Maria replied, adjusting her scope settings and calculating the wind drift. Through her night vision, the targets appeared as green silhouettes against the darker background. Her first shot struck dead center on a target at 400 meters. The second took down a moving silhouette at 350 meters. They were working through the engagement sequence flawlessly when Martinez suddenly grabbed her arm. "Movement to our right," he hissed. "Opposing force." They froze, using their ghillie suits and natural cover to blend into the landscape. An instructor with night vision goggles swept the area with his gaze, looking for students who might have given away their position. After what felt like 10 minutes, the instructor moved on. Maria and Martinez completed their engagements and began moving to their extraction point when they heard voices ahead. Any muzzle flashes from that position? Maria recognized Garrison's voice immediately. He was supposed to be in a completely different firing position, but here he was, directly in their extraction route. "Someone's still out there," another voice suggested. "We could report movement in Sector 7. Force them to spend time searching that area." "A better idea," Garrison replied. "We report suspicious activity at Santos's position. Make the instructors think she broke protocol." Martinez looked at Maria, his face grim in the green glow of night vision. They both understood what was happening. Garrison was planning to make a false report that would result in Maria's elimination from the exercise. "Can we go around?" Martinez whispered. Maria studied their position. The extraction route was narrow, bounded by open ground that would leave them exposed. Going around would add 30 minutes to their movement, and they were already cutting it close on the time limit. "Negative," she replied. "We stick to the plan." They waited for Garrison's team to move, then continued toward the extraction point. But as they approached the final checkpoint, Maria saw an instructor waiting with a radio in his hand. "Santos. Martinez," the instructor called out. "We received reports of protocol violations in your sector. I need to debrief you immediately." Maria's heart sank, but she kept her voice steady. "What kind of violations, sir?" "Unauthorized movement outside. Your assigned sector. Failure to maintain communications protocol. Possible compromise of other team positions." "Sir, we remained in our assigned sector throughout the exercise and maintained radio silence as directed," Maria replied. Martinez stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, we followed all protocols exactly. We can provide a detailed timeline of our movements and engagements." The instructor looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "I'm going to have to mark this as incomplete pending further review. Report to Master Sergeant Morrison at 0800 tomorrow." As. They walked back to the barracks. Martinez was furious. "This is complete garbage, and you know it. We performed flawlessly out there." "It doesn't matter," Maria said quietly. "The damage is done. Like hell, it doesn't matter. You can't let them get away with this." Maria stopped walking and looked at her friend. "Tommy, you've been great to work with, but you need to understand something. If I make a big deal about this, if I file complaints or cry foul, I become exactly what they say, a whiner who can't handle the pressure. So you're just going to take it? I'm going to do what I've always done. Keep my head down, do the work, and let my performance speak for itself." That night, alone in her room, Maria felt the weight of months of harassment pressing down on her. She'd maintained her composure in public, but privately, the constant battle was wearing her down. Every success was questioned, every mistake magnified, and every achievement diminished by suggestions that she'd receive special treatment. She pulled out a piece of paper and began writing a letter to Colonel Reeves, requesting transfer to a different program. Maybe Morrison was right. Maybe she'd proven her point and could find success elsewhere without the constant struggle. But as she wrote, she thought about her sister Rosa, who'd just been accepted to medical school after years of being told she wasn't smart enough. She thought about her mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table while studying English at night. She thought about all the women who would come after her, who would face the same doubts and challenges. Maria crumpled up the letter and threw it in the trash dump the next morning. She reported to Morrison's office at exactly 0800. The master sergeant was waiting with a cup of coffee and a serious expression. "Close the door, Santos." She complied and took the seat he indicated. "I've reviewed the reports from last night's exercise," Morrison began. "I've also spoken with the instructor who debriefed you and reviewed the timeline of radio communications." Maria waited, preparing herself for whatever came next. "There's no evidence to support the allegations made against you. Your movement pattern, as tracked by our monitoring system, never deviated from your assigned sector. Your shooting scores were perfect, and your extraction timing was within acceptable limits." Relief flooded through Maria, but Morrison wasn't finished. "What concerns me is the pattern of reports we've been receiving about you, always from the same sources, always unsubstantiated, always designed to cast doubt on your performance." Maria chose her words carefully. "I'm aware that some of my fellow students have concerns about my presence in the program, Master Sergeant." Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Santos, I've been training snipers for more years than I care to count. I've seen every kind of soldier imaginable, natural talents, hard workers, prima donnas, and troublemakers. What I look for is character under pressure." He paused, studying her face. "Your shooting ability is exceptional. Your tactical knowledge is solid. Your physical conditioning is excellent. But what impresses me most is how you've handled the pressure you've been under. A lesser soldier would have cracked by now, would have started making excuses or demanding special treatment. I just want to do the job, Master Sergeant. I know you do. And that's why I'm recommending you for early advancement to the final phase of training. Maria's eyes widened. The final phase wasn't scheduled to begin for another month. Sir, you're ready, Santos. Your skills are already beyond what most students achieve by graduation. The question is whether you want to take the challenge. Maria thought for a moment about what this meant. Early advancement would separate her from the group dynamics that had made her life miserable. But it would also mean facing the ultimate test of her abilities with less preparation time. I'll take the challenge, Master Sergeant, Morrison smiled. I thought you might. Report to Range 7 tomorrow at 0600. He paused at the door. And Santos? Yes, sir? Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow, we find out what you're really made of. Range 7 was different from the other training areas Maria had become familiar with over the past months. Located in a remote section of Fort Mason, it was a sprawling complex of natural terrain that replicated real-world combat scenarios. Rocky outcroppings, dense vegetation, and elevated positions created a challenging environment that would test every skill she'd developed. Master Sergeant Morrison was waiting for her at 0600, along with two other instructors. She didn't recognize a weathered sergeant first class named Davies and a quiet woman with captain's bars, whose name tag read Walsh. Santos, Morrison began, this is your final examination. It will last 72 hours and test everything you've learned about precision shooting, fieldcraft, survival, and tactical decision-making. Captain Walsh stepped forward. The scenario is based on real-world operations. You are a sniper team of one, operating behind enemy lines. Your mission is to eliminate 5 high-value targets while avoiding detection by superior enemy forces. She handed Maria a manila envelope. Inside, you'll find target photographs, last known locations, and intelligence reports. The targets will be represented by instructors positioned throughout the range. Some will be stationary, others will move according to realistic patrol patterns. Sergeant Davies spoke up. You'll be tracked by our best opposing force instructors, veterans with real combat experience who know all the tricks. If they spot you, your mission fails. If you miss a target, your mission fails. If you're detected after engaging a target, your mission fails. Maria studied the briefing materials. 5 targets, distances ranging from 300 to 1,200 meters, moving through terrain that offered limited concealment and multiple opportunities for counter-detection. It was the most challenging scenario she'd ever faced. Weather conditions? She asked. Variable, Morrison replied. Current wind is 8 to 12 miles per hour from the northwest, but we're expecting a storm system later today. Temperature will drop 20 degrees and visibility may be reduced. Equipment restrictions? Standard field load, Walsh answered. 72 hours of food and water, basic survival gear, and your Men 24 system with 100 rounds of ammunition. No resupply, no external support. Maria nodded, running through the logistics in her head. She'd need to move efficiently between target areas while conserving energy and ammunition. The weather changes would complicate shooting calculations, and the extended time frame meant fatigue would become a factor. Any questions? Morrison asked. Just one, Master Sergeant. What's the success rate for this exercise? The 3 instructors exchanged glances. In 15 years, Davies said slowly, we've had exactly 3 students complete all requirements. Successfully. Understood, Maria replied. When do I start? Now, Walsh said, checking her watch. Your first target was last seen in Sector 4, approximately 2 kilometers northeast of this position. Good hunting, Santos. Maria shouldered her pack and weapon, took a compass bearing, and moved out into the harsh Arizona terrain. The morning air was crisp and clear, offering excellent visibility but also increasing the risk of detection. She moved carefully through the scattered brush and rock formations, using every piece of cover to mask her approach. This wasn't just about marksmanship anymore. This was about survival, stealth, and the kind of mental toughness that separated elite soldiers from everyone else. 2 hours of careful stalking brought her to an elevated position overlooking Sector 4. Through her spotting scope, she could see movement in a cluster of buildings 600 meters away, her first target, represented by an instructor in civilian clothes. The shot presented multiple challenges. The target was partially concealed behind a concrete barrier, leaving only a narrow window of opportunity. Wind gusts were affecting vegetation in the target area, indicating variable conditions that would require careful calculation. Maria settled into a stable shooting position, using her bipod and a natural rest to create a solid platform. She observed the target's movement pattern for 30 minutes, noting the timing of his exposures and the brief moments when a clean shot would be possible. When she was ready, Maria controlled her breathing and waited for the target to appear in the predicted location. The crosshairs settled on center mass. She accounted for wind drift and target movement, then squeezed the trigger in a smooth, straight-back motion. The shot broke clean, and through her scope, she saw the target stagger and raise a red flag, indicating a successful elimination. 1 down, 4 to go. She immediately began planning her exit from the area, knowing that the shot would bring searchers to investigate. Using a different route than her approach, Maria moved to a secondary position and waited for the inevitable response. Within minutes, 3 opposing force instructors converged on the target area, searching for signs of the sniper's position. They moved with professional skill, checking sightlines and potential firing positions with methodical precision. Maria remained motionless for 2 hours until the searchers moved on, then began her approach to the second target area. The afternoon. Weather was changing as predicted, with increasing cloud cover and shifting wind patterns. Target 2 was a moving patrol in Sector 7, approximately 800 meters from her current position. The approach would require crossing open ground and timing her movement to avoid several observation posts. She waited until late afternoon, using the changing light conditions to mask her movement. The stalk took 4 hours of patient crawling and careful navigation through terrain that offered minimal concealment. By evening, she was in position overlooking the patrol route. The target appeared on schedule, moving with 2 other figures who represented bodyguards. The engagement window would be narrow, perhaps 3 seconds, when the target would be separated from his protection. Wind had increased to 15 miles per hour with unpredictable gusts. Maria spent an hour studying vegetation movement and dust patterns to understand how the wind was behaving in the target area. When the moment came, everything had to be perfect. The target stepped away from his escorts. Maria accounted for the wind push at 800 meters and fired. The bullet struck true, and another red flag appeared. 2 down. As darkness fell, Maria found a concealed position for the night. She ate cold rations, drank sparingly from her water supply, and studied her maps and target folders by the dim glow of her red-filtered flashlight. 3 targets remained, scattered across the range at distances up to 1,200 meters. The weather forecast called for rain and dropping temperatures, which would affect both visibility and ballistics. Maria allowed herself 4 hours of sleep, setting her internal clock to wake before dawn. The storm had arrived during the night, bringing steady rain and gusty winds that would complicate every aspect of her remaining missions. But as she lay in her improvised shelter, listening to the rain patter against her poncho, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in months: pure focus. No harassment, no undermining comments, no questioning of her abilities. Just her, the mission, and the opportunity to prove once and for all what she was truly capable of. Tomorrow would bring the most challenging shots of her career. But tonight, for the first time since arriving at Fort Mason, Maria Santos slept peacefully. The third target was the most challenging yet, a sniper positioned in a bell tower 1,200 meters away in Sector 12. Intelligence reports indicated he would appear at random intervals between 0600 and 1000 hours, remaining visible for no more than 30 seconds at a time. The approach took most of the morning. Rain had turned the rocky terrain slippery and treacherous while also providing cover for her movement. She reached her calculated firing position just after 0800, soaked through but undetected. From 1,200 meters in these conditions, the shot would push her skills to their absolute limit. Rain was affecting visibility, wind was gusting unpredictably, and the cold was making her hands stiff despite her gloves. Maria set up behind a large boulder, using her pack and natural rests to create the most stable platform possible. She studied the target area through her scope, noting how the rain was affecting the air between her position and the tower. At 0-8-40-7, movement appeared in the tower window. Maria settled behind her rifle, controlled her breathing, and began her calculations. Range, 1,200 meters. Wind, 18 miles per hour, gusting to 25, shifting between northwest and west. Temperature, 38 degrees. Humidity, 95%. The target appeared again at 0-9-12, visible for perhaps 20 seconds. Too quick for a confident shot in these conditions. Maria held her fire. At 0934. The target made his longest appearance, yet nearly 30 seconds of clear visibility. Maria had been tracking the wind patterns, noting how the rain was affecting bullet drift. When she was as ready as she'd ever be, she took the shot. Through the scope, she watched the bullets trace through the rain, saw it strike the target center mass, and observed the red flag deployment. An impossible shot made possible through patience and skill. 3 down. The fourth target was located in a valley position that required Maria to shoot from an elevated height at 900 meters. The challenge wasn't distance. It was the fact that the target was surrounded by non-combatant role players that she couldn't harm. The approach took 6 hours, moving through terrain that was becoming increasingly difficult as the storm intensified. By the time she reached her firing position, it was late afternoon on the second day, and fatigue was becoming a serious factor. Through her scope, she observed the target area. Her mark was a figure in distinctive clothing who moved unpredictably among civilians. Sometimes he was clear, sometimes partially obscured, sometimes completely blocked by innocent personnel. Maria waited and waited. For 3 hours, she held position in the cold rain, watching for the perfect moment when she could take the shot without risk to the role players. At 1847, her patience was rewarded. The target moved to an isolated position away from all other personnel. Maria had perhaps 15 seconds before he would return to the crowd. Cold, tired, and operating at the edge of her physical limits, Maria made the shot count. The bullet flew true across 900 meters of rain-soaked air and found its mark. 4 down, 1 to go. The final target was the most dangerous, yet a counter-sniper who knew he was being hunted and was actively searching for her. Intelligence indicated he was positioned somewhere in Sector 15, armed with his own precision rifle and thermal imaging equipment. This wouldn't just be a test of marksmanship. It would be a deadly game of hide-and-seek, with someone who had all her training and more experience. Maria spent the night moving towards Sector 15, using the storm as cover, but also fighting against exhaustion and the beginning stages of hypothermia. Her food was running low, her water nearly gone, and every muscle in her body ached from 36 hours of continuous operations. Dawn of the third day brought clearer skies, but dropping temperatures. As Maria approached the target area, she knew she was being hunted as actively as she was hunting. She found signs of her opponent's presence: disturbed vegetation, a faint footprint in muddy ground, scratch marks on a rock where someone had rested a rifle. He was good, very good. But he'd left traces that told her he was operating somewhere within a 400-meter radius. The cat-and-mouse game began in earnest. Maria would move to an observation position, glass the area for signs of her target, then relocate before staying too long in one place. Meanwhile, somewhere out there, he was doing the same thing. At 10:30, she spotted movement, just a flash of something that didn't belong in the natural environment. There, in a cluster of rocks 650 meters away, someone was using a spotting scope to search the terrain she'd just vacated. Maria had found her target, but he was in a nearly perfect position with excellent concealment and multiple escape routes. Worse, his thermal equipment meant that staying in position too long would eventually give away her location. She had one advantage. He didn't know she'd spotted him yet. Maria used that edge to work herself into a better position, moving with infinite care through terrain that offered minimal cover. It took 2 hours to cover 200 meters. But finally, she was in a position where she had a clear shot at Vunmurk. 450 meters. Through her scope, she could see her target still searching for her with his optics. The irony wasn't lost on her. The final test would be decided by who saw whom first, and she'd won that crucial first engagement. Maria settled behind her rifle for what she knew would be the most important shot of her career. Everything she'd worked for, every insult she'd endured, every moment of doubt she'd overcome, it all came down to this one bullet. She controlled her breathing, let her heart rate settle, and placed the crosshairs on her target. The fundamentals her father had taught her, refined by months of training and years of combat experience, guided her through the final firing sequence. The shot broke clean and true. At 450 meters, in challenging field conditions, after 70 hours of continuous operations, Maria Santos delivered a perfect hit. 5 targets eliminated. Mission complete. As she cleared her rifle and began to walk back to the checkpoint, Maria felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She'd not only passed the most difficult test the Army had to offer, she'd done it under conditions that would have broken many of her critics. The hardest part was over. Now came the reckoning. The debriefing room was packed. Word had spread throughout Fort Mason that someone had actually completed the legendary 72-hour final examination, and curiosity had drawn instructors, students, and administrative personnel to witness the results. Maria sat at a metal table facing a panel of 3 officers: Colonel Reeves, Master Sergeant Morrison, and Captain Walsh. Her uniform was still damp from the field exercise. Her boots caked with mud, but her spine was straight and her eyes were clear. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations among the assembled crowd. Garrison and his followers occupied the back rows, their faces showing a mixture of disbelief and resentment. "Staff Sergeant Santos," Colonel Reeves began, consulting a thick folder of paperwork, "you have just completed the most demanding test in our curriculum. The results speak for themselves." He looked up at her. 5 targets eliminated at ranges from 450 to 1,200 meters. 0 detection events during 72 hours of continuous operations. Perfect score on tactical movement and fieldcraft. Outstanding performance under extreme weather conditions. A murmur went through the room. In the back, Garrison leaned forward in his seat. Morrison stood up. "Santos, in 15 years of conducting this examination, we've seen exactly 3 successful completions. Your performance wasn't just successful, it was exceptional." Captain Walsh opened another folder. Your shooting scores under field conditions exceeded those achieved by some of our instructor staff. The 1,200-meter shot in heavy rain and gusty winds was, frankly, extraordinary. Maria felt a surge of pride, but kept her expression neutral. Thank you, sir. The training here prepared me well. Colonel Reeves smiled slightly. The training helped, but this performance required something more than instruction. It required natural ability, mental toughness, and character under pressure. From the audience, a voice called out, "What about the assistance she received?" The room fell silent. Reeves looked toward the back. "Excuse me?" Garrison stood up. "Sir, I'm just wondering about the level of support Staff Sergeant Santos had during the exercise. Special equipment, modified weather conditions, that sort of thing." Morrison's face darkened. "Sergeant Garrison, are you suggesting this examination was somehow compromised?" "Not compromised, Master Sergeant. Just ... adjusted to ensure a particular outcome." The tension in the room was palpable. Maria felt every eye on her, waiting to see how she would respond to this final attempt to undermine her achievement. Colonel Reeves' voice was ice cold. "Sergeant Garrison, that's a serious accusation. Do you have specific evidence to support it?" Garrison faltered slightly but pressed on. "Well, no, sir, but..." "Then sit down and remain quiet unless you have something constructive to contribute." "But..." The damage was done. Maria could see it in the faces around the room. The seed of doubt had been planted. Even her perfect performance was being questioned, qualified, diminished by the suggestion that she'd somehow received special treatment. Captain Walsh seemed to sense the mood in the room. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "we should review the examination protocols to address any concerns." "Excellent idea," Reeves replied. He turned to Morrison. "Master Sergeant, would you please explain the monitoring procedures?" Morrison stood up, his weathered face serious. "Every student who takes this examination is tracked continuously by GPS. Every shot is recorded by acoustic sensors and confirmed by direct observation. Weather conditions are monitored and documented in real time." He moved to a projector and began displaying data. Santos's GPS track shows she covered 20-3-.7 miles during the exercise, all on foot, through terrain with elevation changes totaling 4,200 feet. Her movement patterns were consistent with advanced fieldcraft training. The next slide showed weather data. Conditions during the exercise included temperatures ranging from 38 to 52 degrees, wind speeds up to 25 miles per hour, and over 3 inches of rainfall. These were among the most challenging conditions we've recorded. A ballistics chart appeared. Her 5 shots were taken at ranges of 600, 800, 1,200, 900, and 450 meters, respectively. Each was confirmed by multiple observers and acoustic monitoring. Shooting solutions were calculated in real time by our instructors to verify feasibility. Morrison looked directly at Garrison. The 1,200-meter shot, in particular, was deemed nearly impossible by 2 of our senior instructors. They estimated a success probability of less than 20% under those conditions. Captain Walsh added, "The examination was monitored by the same personnel who've overseen every previous attempt. There were no modifications to equipment, weather conditions, or scoring criteria." Colonel Reeves stood up. "In other words, Staff Sergeant Santos completed one of the military's most demanding tests under standard conditions, with no assistance, and achieved results that surpassed 99.7% of all previous attempts." The room was quiet now. The weight of data and official testimony had effectively silenced the doubters. But Maria knew that facts alone wouldn't change every mind. She stood up and faced the assembly. "If I may, sir?" Reeves nodded. "The floor is yours, Staff Sergeant." Maria looked out at the faces before her, some supportive, some skeptical, some openly hostile. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. For the past 6 months, I've heard every excuse for why I shouldn't be here. I'm too weak, too emotional, too different. I've been told I was taking a spot from someone more deserving, that I was getting special treatment, that my successes were just lucky breaks. She paused, making eye contact with several students in the front rows. I've had my equipment sabotaged, my alarm clock tampered with, and my performance questioned at every turn. I've been subjected to a level of scrutiny that would have broken weaker people and was probably designed to do exactly that. Garrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But here's what those people didn't understand, Maria continued. I didn't come here to prove I could be as good as anyone else. I came here to be the best, period. Not the best woman, not the best minority, not the best diversity candidate, just the best. She gestured toward the projection screen, still, showing her performance data. Those numbers don't lie. That performance doesn't need qualifiers or explanations. I didn't succeed despite being a woman. I succeeded because I'm a better sniper than everyone else in this room. A few people shifted in their seats, but no one spoke. To those of you who supported me, who judged me by my performance rather than your preconceptions, thank you. You made this journey bearable. Her gaze found Garrison in the back row. And to those who tried to tear me down, who questioned every achievement and looked for excuses to explain away my success, thank you too. You made me stronger, more determined, and ultimately better than I would have been without your opposition. Morrison was grinning now, and even Colonel Reeves was trying to hide a smile. I didn't just pass your test, Maria concluded. I mastered it. And I did it by being exactly who I've always been, a soldier who refuses to quit, refuses to make excuses, and refuses to accept anything less than excellence. She sat back down to scattered applause that gradually built throughout the room. The truth had been spoken. The reckoning was complete. Colonel Reeves stood up, his voice carrying the weight of official recognition. Staff Sergeant Santos, congratulations on completing the Advanced Sniper course with the highest scores in program history. You are hereby certified as a United States Army Sniper and will be assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment, effective immediately. As the formal ceremony concluded and people began filing out of the room, Martinez, Williams, and Collins approached Maria with genuine smiles and firm handshakes. That was incredible, Collins said, his young face beaming with admiration. My sister's going to flip when I tell her about this. Morrison walked over as the crowd dispersed. Santos, I've got one more piece of business with you. He handed her a small wooden case. Inside was a distinctive pin, the crossed rifle's insignia of a qualified Army sniper. Your father served in Vietnam, correct? Yes, Master Sergeant. Then? He'll understand what this means. Wear it with pride. You've earned it. As Maria pinned the insignia to her uniform, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. Every obstacle, every insult, every moment of doubt had led to this point. Garrison walked past without making eye contact, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Some battles, Maria reflected, were won not by destroying your opponents, but by simply being undeniably better than they claimed you could be. Outside the building, the Arizona sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Maria pulled out her phone and dialed her father's number. Papa, it's Maria. I have some good news to share. The conversation that followed was brief but emotional. Her father's voice cracked with pride as she described the examination, the perfect shots, the impossible conditions she'd overcome. When she mentioned the 1,200-meter shot in the rain, he was quiet for a long moment. Mia, he finally said, I taught you to shoot, but what you've accomplished, that came from something deeper. Your mother and I so proud. After hanging up, Maria looked out at the shooting ranges where she'd proven herself. Range by range, shot by shot, day by day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new doubts to overcome, and new standards to exceed. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. 6 months later, Maria found herself in a different kind of proving ground, the mountains of Afghanistan, where precision and patience meant the difference between life and death for the soldiers she protected. Her spotter, a seasoned sergeant named Roberts, lay beside her in their concealed position, overlooking a valley where intelligence indicated high-value targets would be moving. They'd been in position for 18 hours, waiting for the perfect shot. Movement, 2 o'clock, Roberts whispered, adjusting his spotting scope. Range, 1,100 meters. Maria shifted slightly behind her rifle, studying the target area through her scope. There a figure in distinctive clothing, exactly matching the intelligence photos they'd been given. Confirmed, she whispered back. High-value target, 1,100 meters. Roberts began calling out environmental conditions. Wind, 5 to 8 miles per hour, variable from the northeast. Temperature steady at 42 degrees. Humidity 60%. Maria made minute adjustments to her scope, compensating for the mountain air and the distance involved. This wasn't a training exercise with red flags and scoring systems. This was the real thing, where her skills would determine whether American soldiers lived or died. On target, she reported quietly. Roberts watched through his scope as the target moved into an optimal position, clear of any civilians and with no obstructions between Maria's position and the objective. Send it, he said. Maria controlled her. Breathing, let her heart rate settle, and applied steady pressure to the trigger. The fundamentals she'd learned from her father, refined at Fort Mason under Morrison's guidance, and proven in that legendary 72-hour examination, all came together in this moment. The rifle fired with a clean, sharp crack that echoed across the valley. Through her scope, Maria watched the bullet's flight across 1,100 meters of thin mountain air. Direct hit. Roberts observed the target area for several seconds, then reached up and keyed his radio. Command, this is Overwatch. Target eliminated. I say again, target eliminated. He paused, then looked at Maria with genuine respect. Outstanding shot, Santos. Textbook perfect. As they began the careful process of packing up their position and preparing to exfiltrate, Roberts shook his head in amazement. You know, I've been spotting for snipers for 8 years. Worked with some of the best shooters in the Army. But I've never seen anything like what you just did. Maria smiled slightly as she secured her rifle. Just doing the job, Sergeant. No, Roberts said, checking his equipment one final time. That was something special. That was art. As they moved carefully down the mountainside toward their extraction point, Maria thought about that day at Fort Mason when Garrison had questioned whether she belonged. She thought about the harassment, the sabotage, the constant pressure to prove herself worthy of a place she'd already earned through skill and determination. None of that mattered now. What mattered was the mission, the soldiers she protected, and the perfect execution of skills that had been forged in fire and proven. Under pressure, they handed her the sniper rifle because she was the best person for the job. When the spotter checked the range and confirmed the impossible shot, when he ripped off his headset in amazement at what he'd just witnessed, it wasn't because she was a woman who could shoot. It was because she was a sniper who could hit anything. She aimed at Dot, and that, Maria knew, was exactly how it should be. The radio crackled to life as they reached the extraction point. Overwatch, this is Command. Outstanding work out there. Mission accomplished. Maria keyed her radio one final time. Command, this is Santos. Happy to serve. As the helicopter lifted off into the Afghan night, carrying them back to base, Maria looked out at the mountains where she'd just proven herself once again. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, New opportunities to demonstrate that excellence knew no boundaries. She'd handed them the shot they needed. And when it counted most, she delivered it perfectly. Just like she always had. Just like she always would. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.